Judges make decisions in cases that affect us even when we don't go to court. Case in point, your child's science textbooks begin with an anti-science message. A case like that is going to find its way to the court. It did find its way to the court, and it was decided by a gentleman by the name of Clarence Cooper, a gentleman who was a product of the training and values that he got at Emory University and Clark Atlanta University and at home, in homes like the ones we're familiar with. When the time came to decide if you live in South Fulton, what school district your children will be assigned to. That case came before a judge, and we trusted the decision because it was decided by a guy named Alfred Dempsey, product of Harvard Law School and Morehouse College, who got his values there and in homes like the ones we're familiar with. When the time came to decide whether Georgia's ban on gay marriage was going to be valid, that issue found its way to the courts, that we could trust the decision because it was decided by somebody named Constance Russell, a product of Harvard Law School, UVA undergrad, who came from a home like the ones that we're familiar with. All these folks have certain things in common, but they also have something in common with people like the judge who had to resign because he was accused of sexual harassment. What they had in common was they're like the turtle on the fence post. They didn't get there by themselves. Somebody put them there. Which brings me to this guy. This is a guy named Lester Maddox. This guy first came to the public attention when he owned a restaurant in Atlanta, and rather than serve people of color, he chased them away from his restaurant with a pickaxe. So what kind of consequences did he experience for that action? The consequence he experienced is that the people of Georgia elected him governor. So here's the question. I'm going to name 3 governors: Nathan Deal, Sonny Perdue, and Lester Maddox. I'm going to ask you to tell me which one of those 3 governors appointed the fewest judges of color to the Superior Court of Fulton County. Who can tell me? It's actually a trick question because they all appointed the same number of judges of color to the Superior Court of Fulton County, and that number is 0. That number is 0. 3 governors, 2 of them in the last 12, 15 years, 0 black judges on the Superior Court of Fulton County. Here are some national figures for you to consider. 70% of the criminal defendants in the state courts of this country are people of color, but they're only 20% of the judges. Let's get local. This is Georgia, the state where we live. You can see that persons of color comprise 46% of the population of our state. How is that 46% represented in our courts? Let's look at the appellate courts. Between 2003 and 2015, the appointments to the appellate courts were 22%, or about half their share of the population. Let's talk about the superior courts, our trial courts. The last governor was named Sonny Perdue. And so what percentage of his appointments to any superior court in the state were persons of color? The answer is 0. Our present governor is Nathan Deal. He did a little better than his predecessor. Persons of color that he appointed to the superior courts around this state were 9%. The appointment process is resulting in a vast underrepresentation of folks newly going on the bench. And what that means is that over time, the percentage of judges on the bench of color erodes. So in Fulton County Superior Court, 2002, we had 44% of the judges. 2014, it was down to 30. And that's primarily because one of the ways that people get on the bench is by appointments. Okay, if a judge who's sitting on the bench decides to resign in the middle of his term, the vacancy is filled by an appointment by the governor. And so that's resulted in a vast erosion in diversity. Why is that important? Because diversity affects the quality of decision making. If you have one point of view that's represented in the courts, you're going to have folks who consistently bring one set of values, one set of experiences, which is not representative of the experiences of the people that come before those courts. So what do we do about it? The fact is there is a solution, and that's the good news. The good news is that appointments are not the only way that people get on the bench. People also get on the bench by election. So that if the governor appoints somebody to any court, whoever he appoints eventually has to run for re-election. And the voters get to decide whether that person stays on the bench. If a judge decides to serve out his or her term, then the voters get to fill the vacancy that's created by that expired term. That's the good news. Potentially, if people actually understand the role that they can play in making a difference in turning around this erosion of diversity. And that's part of the work of advocacy around here. We've been involved in encouraging people to apply for appointments, recruiting good candidates, encouraging people who make appointments to make appointments of people who are representative of the communities they serve. We've been involved in encouraging people to run for office and assure them that if they run for office, they will have the support they need to be successful, and to assure that the people whose votes they seek understand the importance. Understand it's important not to just vote the top of the ticket when the election day comes around, but to vote the bottom of the ticket where the judicial races are most often found. We've had mixed results. So that 2 years ago in Fulton County, but we were successful in encouraging some people to run against incumbent judges. And so we sent out a mailer like this, people in our communities, to let them know that there was a race they needed to be concerned about. We weren't successful. We retooled and came back in 2016. In 2016, we had the advantage in Fulton County of 3 incumbent judges who struck a blow for democracy by serving out their terms and letting the voters choose their successor. And in all 3 of those races, they were replaced by people who were representative of this community.
That's right.
Our work is much bigger than Fulton County. The challenge is much bigger than Fulton County. If there are lots of counties in the metro area where people of color are overrepresented in the population, but not represented at all on the bench. And so our mission is to look at 2018 and see if we can't have the kind of influence in these other counties in 2018 that we had in Fulton County in 2016. In the meanwhile, you're going to have appointments. It's going to be important to encourage people to apply for those positions, encourage people who make those appointments to appoint people who are representative of the communities they serve. But it's important also to continue to educate the public about the importance of these elections that are coming up, and make sure that the candidates in those elections get the kind of support they need. And that's why, frankly, we need your help. We need a movement of people who are engaged in this exercise, who are moving out into the communities, letting people know that they have a role to play in restoring justice to our state. We have a role to play in making sure that people who step up and run for office have the support they need in terms of human resources and in terms of money.